Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where two dudes from halfway around the world talk everything green and gold. I'm Mike, and that's Iowa Joe. And today we're gonna preview the Week 8 game against the Vikings as the Minnesota Vikings come to Lambeau. Joe, um, not much positive thoughts at the moment, but anything you're looking forward to for this game in particular?
Am I looking forward to any game so far this year? Uh, I mean, it's a rivalry game, so it's always gonna be tough. Um, but what can you really say? We said it during our review of the Broncos game. We all knew this was going to be an up and down season, no matter what happened, and it's just proven outright that it's up and down. So far, we're having more downs than ups, but eh, and I know a lot of people are like overblowing the situation right now, but it's all teachable stuff. It's not like it's not teachable stuff. It's just having somebody to get in there and teach them. I don't know. The floor's not doing his job. I kind of mentioned something earlier that maybe Stinovich needs to spend a little bit more time in the offensive line room instead of worrying about the offense overall. I But I mean, we'll talk more about this in a minute or two. But I think it's all teachable stuff because they're all athletic enough. It's not like Jordan Love doesn't have an arm. I mean, he has the ability to be the next great one, but he's got to be able to rein it in. Yeah, that's where Tom Clements and Matt LaFleur have to sit there and say, "All right, this is what you need to do. We need to work on this. Run through drills." uh, reach back. Clements needs to reach back into the Mike McCarthy QB school like they did with Aaron Rodgers and say, all right, this is what we need to do. You need to do your footwork. You need to read your progressions a little bit better. But all like I keep saying, it's all teachable stuff. So it's only going to get. What's the old saying? You got to hit rock bottom before you hit your stride. So that's basically where we're at right now.
Yeah. And the other one I used is it's going to get worse before it gets better. And the only question for a lot of Packer fans is how much worse at this point. I know, like you said, there's a lot of people who are, they're totally in the midst of doom and gloom. And I mean, it's understandable when this team hasn't, like Jacob Westendorf was saying on Pick Six the other day. What can you point to that's a good thing that this team has done consistently this season? And it's that kind of lack of relevant recent proficient play that has a lot of people down in the doldrums. But um every week is a new opportunity for a bounce back. And I mean, any given Sunday the team can look good. Like you said, they're not, they're playing poorly because they're making a lot of mental and physical errors at the same time, but they're coachable things. It's not like they're just so talent deficient that, you know they're playing like one of the worst rosters in the league, but I don't think talent wise they are a bottom third talent wise roster in the league. I think they're closer to mid tier. It's a matter of guys at the right positions making plays and such. I think you did a good job touching on that, Joe. It's just the slow climb. They've been in free fall for a few weeks, so there's a lot of mountain for them to get to climb back up to sea level at this point. But
And for a
yeah,
lot of modern Packer fans, they're not used to it. I mean, you listen to the older Packer fans. Oh, well, you guys didn't live through the '70s and '80s. Well, no, we didn't because we're so used to team building and stuff like that, where we've had success for a long time. Well,
yeah,
I mean, even look at the Patriots right now. They were a dynasty. What was it? 8 Super Bowl appearances, 7 rings or something like that. And now they're bottom feeders because they're struggling trying to put a team together. Well, this is where we're kind of at when you decide to go all in on teams. And we're kind of getting that right now. We don't really have the cap room at the beginning of the season. We really didn't have the cap room to move anything. We didn't have the draft capital to really move anything, and now we're kind of reaping what we sowed for going all in. So yeah, it's just something we're gonna have to go with stride. Now, come next year, if well, let's say this: we've said from the beginning that if Jordan is still making the same mistakes at the end of the year that he was at the beginning of the year, then maybe we need to look at something else. But if we're still in this downhill slide going into next year, then maybe there needs to be a revamping kind of all over the place, not just player
Yeah.
wise, but coaching staff wise and stuff like that.
No, absolutely. That's the beauty and the curse of having 11 more games to go is you're hoping that at least some of these, if not most of these issues that you've been talking about, and we've been talking about for the past month, basically, you hope that some of them start to iron themselves out, or you find solutions, or you decide that and this isn't even talking just about quarterback and Love. This is any position on the roster. You just start to, an answer is we don't have anything at that position, and it's not a great answer to hear from a team or fan perspective, but if you are able to determine that, then you have a path to improving your roster, and that's all the function of what this year is about. And the struggle is that they have to also determine if Love is the guy while they're doing a revamp of a bunch of the roster. But complicating things in that field this week, they're making a bunch of moves in the secondary because Darnell Savage re-aggravated his shin injury and Stokes pulled up lame on punt coverage. And so both are headed to IR. Both are eligible to return this season. LaFleur made it sound like the team is basically putting them on IR to give them the 4 weeks to get fully healthy so that they're not being overly aggressive with their rehab, and that they do expect both guys back this season. But it does create a roster churn that the team is going to have to survive at this point. To counteract that, they brought up Corey Ballantyne from the practice squad to the 53-man. I know that you and I kind of messaged back and forth about it, but looking back on it, as much as I thought they needed to bring up a safety, it makes sense that they signed Ballantyne because he was out of practice squad elevations, game day elevations. So the only way they were going to be able to play him is if he was on the 53-man, and they signed cornerback Robert Rochelle off of the Panthers practice squad. Rochelle was a Rams draft pick back in 2021, a 9'9" RAS guy, basically. Just a uber athlete who is a raw cornerback prospect, but he honestly is kind of like what Stokes was, tested better in certain in the agility drills than Stokes even did. So of course this is his third team that he's a part of, but never know, maybe just like Razul, not saying that he's going to be Razul, but just like Razul, sometimes you just have to get in the exact right situation to find your way in this league. And not saying that Rochelle will, or even Ballantyne will, with extended play time, but who knows? They're just looking, like I said, they're looking to they're playing musical chairs with some bottom of the roster spots, and if anyone who can prove that they're worthy of finding a seat when the music goes off, that's better for the Packers moving forward. And then taking Ballantyne's spot on the practice squad, they signed Zion Gilbert. And then as far as practice goes, obviously Savage and Stokes did not practice. And other than that, the Packers were relatively healthy. Devondre Campbell returned. Aaron Jones stretched but did not participate. And then Musgrave and Josh Myers were the only other DNPs. So a lot of guys on the injury report, but most of them practiced. So that is a good step in the right direction, hopefully, in that regard.
I don't think anything's going to change the rest of the season. I think we're still going to have the same issues with Aaron Jones, that they're just going to keep him listed as limited for the most part, because hamstring injuries are kind of
Yeah.
like back injuries. They never really go away. Musgraves is a little bit interesting because I know he finished out the game. Then they said when he left the locker room that day, he was in a walking boot. And so,
Was in
and
it today
nobody,
at practice, yeah, too. At Wednesday's practice, he was on the side in the boot as well. So
yeah, so they've never really, as far as I know, they really never said the extent of the injury.
yeah, they didn't even identify if it's high or low. They just LaFleur kind of alluded that he's hoping it's a shorter term, but didn't really shed any more light than that. So you just kind of
And
hold your breath on that one.
I know Zane Anderson, they finally found him. He was a full participant in practice. So I, they're banged up. I think that's one of the big issues of having these athletic freaks as players is, the human body can only handle so much, and these guys are, above and beyond what a normal human body can take. So and same for any athlete, but when you get into the freakish athlete type, it gets a little bit worse. So you got to roll with the punches on it. But I have to go back to the eerie similarities between Rogers' first year starting and Love's first year starting, because it seemed like for the first few years of Rogers' career, he never had a fully healthy team. They were always banged up. You know, all the starters were banged up at some point during, Clay was always getting hurt. Raji was missing time. All these
I think
he
his
was
first season as the starter, Ryan Grant battled a hamstring injury the whole season, and then like 2/3 of the way through the season, Tasha blew his knee out, and I
and
thought his
Clifton
Packers
was
career was yeah
Yeah, and Clifton was missing time and shit like that. So, but it's just amazing the uh
the parallels.
similarities. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm not too worried so much about the injuries. I know. Well, I was scheduling a lot of fights in my planner today. I told Dan Kotnick I was going to throw down with him because he was sticking up for Josh Myers for staying around, but yeah, he seemed like he was ready to cut ties with Eric Stokes, and it's like I it just I can't be done with Stokes because this is only year two, and this is just dumb luck injury right now. And
yeah,
it's not like this one's a major injury. It's just a
yeah.
ticky tack injury that he pushed back the original. They're pretty straightforward with what's going on with him. He just kind of tweaked his hamstring, doing something stupid. I don't think he should have been on special teams,
I think they
but
needed to get his conditioning some way, kind of thing, and all. And I saw people complaining about it, but it's like it's and everyone's like, "Oh, why didn't you just start him?" But I was like, it's hard to rotate a corner in and out if you're not in a, if they're not going in a sub package. So I do understand just trying to get him get him with live contact reps and things like that. It's just a bummer. The only concern I have is because I don't know which leg. I'd have to watch the play he pulled up on, but you hope that his hamstring isn't giving out because it's like a overcompensation for him trying to get back from the foot injury and stuff. That's like
I
those are like the two far apart dots that I'm like worried about connecting. But otherwise, you're right. Like it's a hamstring pull, and they're par for the course for Green Bay, and it just sucks that Stokes is he's come back from a pretty bad foot. A Liz Frank injury is nothing to just shrug your shoulders at. So I hope he can get back soon, and that he'll get over this hamstring. But yeah, it's just a bummer for him because I know he's been working really hard to get back on the field for this team.
I think, and I could be wrong, but I was watching. I think somebody posted a clip of when they noticed he came up lame, and I think it's the right leg that
Yeah,
he was reaching for. So I don't know. I don't remember which leg they said or the foot that he injured originally. So I just know the right hamstring is what it looked like he was grabbing at.
yeah,
So, but that's the same with anything.
yeah.
And so far, it looks like, Christian Watson, I don't think he was limited today. I think he was full participant. Well, that's great news considering they thought, it was going to be a major injury that he suffered.
It looked
Jaden
bad.
Jaden Reed is the same way. I mean, with the way his injury looked, you figured he was going to be done, but
That's twice. That's twice this season. Jaden Reed's looked like he was getting carted into IR because week one I thought he blew his knee out at the end of the game, and then on Sunday I thought he broke his leg basically on that screenplay and
Well,
stuff.
and
So yeah,
Devontae Wyatt's the same way. He was carted
yeah,
out, but yet he was considered a limited participant today.
yep.
So that means it's not as serious as they thought it was. I now is he going to play Sunday? I don't think so, unless something really, you know, it really clicks that nothing's major and he can go. But I just have a feeling he's not going to play. But I think we've talked injuries long enough. I'm getting kind of sick of them. So.
Well,
Now, as for the guys that they signed, you said it with the Raz for Robert Rochelle. Um, I I'm kind of interested in that one because he was in the Rams system for a bit, and it's similar to what the Packers do run. So that's an interesting one to pick up. He could come in and make a splash. Who knows? I it could be almost instantaneous that he's going to see playing time, being that there is that similarity in the system that's being run between the two. It's just whether or not he can get the reads down. I was it Mafi or one of the other ones that
Mafi
said,
really liked him. Mafi really
well,
liked him.
not just Rochelle, but they were talking about Gilbert too.
Hmm.
That he was a somebody they liked coming out. So, hey, it's that time of year you just kind of pull from a pile and hope you get somebody. Now I still kind of hold out hope that they will come up and make some kind of trade before the deadline to bring in. I'm hoping a safety. I know the dream is that they go out and get Justin Simmons and Josie Jewell, but I know I'm going to get a lot of questioning about Josie Jewell, and it's not just because of bias with me, because he is a Hawkeye. It's more that we don't have the depth at inside linebacker anymore. I know Devontae Quay's practicing. McDuffie is McDuffie. I don't think he's ever going to be something, like this humongous superstar, but I think he's going to be a serviceable guy. Eric Wilson, kind of the same way. But then after that, there's nothing.
Yep.
Whereas if we can get Josie Jewell in there, let's say Devondre goes down again, because the ankle's not completely healed. You can rotate Jewell and McDuffie in and leave Eric Wilson out on
Special
special
teams.
teams and rotate him in if need be. But then you still got a three-headed monster there that you can rotate in at your inside linebacker. Now it's
Yeah.
just a pipe dream because I imagine they're asking a hell of a price for him. So send AJ Dillon out there for him, and I'll be all right.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out. It's a weird time because yeah, it's like the team doesn't look like they're gonna contend for anything this season, but also they can't just be so shitty that you can't, that Love is always in bad situations in terms of the scoreboard or he's playing with his hand tied behind his back because of what's happening around him. So it does create this weird dichotomy of where like they're not buyers due to being contenders, but they should because they need to properly evaluate. But
Well, and I
that's
don't even think
yeah,
be a full buyer. Just you still got to be able to field a team. Well, you can't rely on, just grabbing a bunch of UDFA special teams type players to fill out your roster. Right now, we're guessing Jonathan Owens is taking over for Savage. We're guessing Valentine's there to start for, if Jaw can't play, which hopefully, he'll come back sooner than later. But you still got to get capable bodies to play. And you can't just rely on junk, whether you're contending or not.
yeah, no,
And
totally
that's why
agree there.
every year you even see teams that aren't contending still trading for these top-notch players.
For guys with a pulse, exactly. But going from the Packers to a team that's shown a pulse the last couple of weeks, the Minnesota Vikings are coming to town. No love or to town. No love lost between these two teams. The Vikings are riding high after a unexpected win over the San Francisco 49ers on Monday Night Football. They're coming in relatively healthy. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is on IR, so that's a bullet to be dodged by the
He's
Packers.
still
But
got one more week, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's not gonna be he's not eligible to be even to open his 21-day window. So he's got 1 or 2 more weeks on IR. So they won't see him, but they will see um Jordan Addison, who has been off to a hot start as a rookie. And Kirk Cousins is having one of his most efficient seasons, positive stats wise. He is still a turnover machine when you get pressure, but the problem there is that it looks like Minnesota has solved a lot of their O-line issues. Christian Darrisaw has become a stud at left tackle. So, the what is kind of one of the few strengths on this Packers defense is going to be put up against a revamped Minnesota line. So it'll be interesting to see if Green Bay can create any pressure. The Minnesota run game is not very good. And it's not a matter of like, oh, they cut Dalvin Cook too early.
Be careful there, Mike, because we've said that about the Broncos. We've said that about the Raiders, and they both ate our ass. Both ate the defense's ass up. So
yeah, I mean, at this point, I can only say what the advanced and the traditional and advanced stats are saying. What Green Bay will do against it, that's a totally separate conversation, but just setting the table for what hypothetically should be coming to town. But you kind of hedged it right there. The reason that I don't really care what Minnesota does on the ground is that, as we pointed out in our review pods the last couple of weeks, yeah, Green Bay has only given up 17 and 19 points the last 2 weeks, but it's a fool's gold stat that's covering up a lot of warts that are still there in this Joe Barry defense. You still see, one of the plays that everyone's pointing at is when Denver lined up in a jumbo package where they had 3 tight ends, and one of the tight ends was an extra O lineman, and Barry goes and lines up with a light nickel box, and people are like, well, he's got to adjust for the pass. And it's like, okay, but I mean, you're going to just let him dog walk you up the middle kind of thing and stuff. And so, of course, but it worked. And it's like, yeah, because they got called for a penalty, and you can't rely on those kind of things. It wasn't because someone made a Herculean play or anything like that. And, you still a couple games ago had Preston on Devontae Adams. So luckily for Preston's sake, he won't be asked to cover Justin Jefferson, but he may have to cover Jordan Addison. So that remains to be seen. And yeah, I think this is one of those games where if Green Bay's offense, and we'll get into that, if Green Bay's offense can't score against this Vikings defense, the Packers defense is going to get exposed, and they're going to get lit up for like 350 passing yards by Kirk Cousins.
The only thing we can hope for is Ja comes back. That his back's doing all right. I know I was hearing from other people that, even when he was back, he wasn't looking great, or he's not as physical after the shoulder injury. Well, if you think about it, he just hadn't been called on because teams weren't throwing at him. So it's hard to be physical when teams aren't throwing at you. You're not going to make a tackle on a guy that's not getting the ball. So the physical part, I'm not going to worry about. It's just the back. Is he going to be able to handle going up and down the field with the back?
I think that's what a lot of people think of too, is they think about it in terms of like, oh, what's he going to do in run support or like taking on blocks? But it is just you and I both know it's the running and the turning and the twisting that you have to do, getting in and out of your back pedal, and even just changing directions to, stop your back pedal and, attack upfield. Those are the movements that really are going to, I don't know what part of his back is ailing him, but if it's a lower back, that's the kind of movement that's really going to flare that thing up. And honestly, it's probably, I'm assuming it's a lower back injury, because I feel like if it was an upper back, it would be a little bit more, he would either be on IR or he would have played kind of thing. But it feels more like a lower mid back kind of thing, because it's one of those where you can practice all week, and then the day before the game, he like doesn't sit right on the plane or something like that. And then, he's out kind of thing and stuff. So Yeah, like I said, we don't know, we don't have his charts, but two guys who've dealt with some back issues, it's not hard to connect the dots on what's kind of ailing him and stuff. So
I'm
yeah,
wondering
like
if
you
he's
said,
doing acupuncture.
you would like to think that they're.
Well, he's a big yogi. I know that. He's a
That's
big
true.
yogi. So I'm wondering if he's trying acupuncture. If not, Jair, go do acupuncture. It'll go
Maybe they
along with
just
your.
haven't gotten to it yet. Maybe it's the flow chart. We've tried ice, we've tried heat, we've tried meds. Okay, acupuncture is next. Oh yeah.
Well, like I said, I know he's big into the yoga stuff, but you would think along with the yoga, he'd want to try acupuncture with it.
Yeah. Unless he's like me and just terrified of needles. But that's
Ah,
a conversation for another day. Um, and like I alluded to, the other side, Minnesota's defense does the thing that Green Bay's offense, particularly Love, has not done well against: blitz. Flores, he, you read a lot of the tweets about the Vikings defense during games, and it's a lot of Flores, what is this? Because he's running cover zero against disadvantageous looks and stuff like that. But um, honestly, if you're Flores game planning, you're looking at this film and you're saying, okay, this O line on every play, someone is messing something up, whether it's a missed assignment, just getting whipped off the line of scrimmage, and it's a not a revolving. It's like a whack-a-mole where you don't know which guy it's going to be on any given play, but somebody, you know, more times than not, somebody is blowing their assignment. So, um, this O line, it's one of those where everyone's like, "What do you fix? How do you fix it?" And this is one of those situations where it's like there is no quote unquote easy fix. Guys just have to play better. Can they? That's the question they're asking about Rasheed Walker. Elton Jenkins, how healthy / how hurt is his knee? He doesn't look like the guy. And I know, like, oh, what if it's the ACL he tore? Nah, where he was at the end of last season, he was moving pretty well. For a guard, he was moving pretty well laterally. It's like the one play that's circulating is he couldn't get the reach block on a stretch zone play. The D tackle lined up over him, went right around him, and that's a sign of a guy who's like trying to slow play it because he knows he can't change directions in a phone booth kind of situation. So um, he's got to get healthier, and who knows? We talked about it. I know you've pushed more the idea of it more than I have, but Josh Myers was a DNP today with the ankle injury he suffered in Denver, and obviously there's a couple more days of practice. I don't know where Myers sits on the list of guys who could play without practicing, but if he
oh God,
misses,
no.
but if he misses the game, you likely see that they kind of I believe the team tipped their hand as to what they're gonna do. Zach Tom is gonna play center, and Yosh Nijman is gonna play right tackle. So, and I'm assuming that's what they're doing in practice with Myers missing time. So
I don't know.
it'll
I
be kind
saw
of,
Yosh was on the injury report too with a
yeah,
knee
I know.
injury.
I just saw that as well. So yeah, it's not a lot of bright spots right now. He's just jumping too hard, trying to block PATs because that's all he's allowed to do at this point.
Yeah, but they've got guys. I mean, that Tanuda is due to come back at some point. Caleb Jones is their other big guy that they're in love with. So it's not like they don't have tackle options. The spot that they don't have options for is the inside of things. I have a feeling if Myers can't go, then you'll see Michael Jordan get one of his practice squad call ups done. They'll run Tom at center. Yosh will be right tackle. Rasheed would be left. Although technically, I think I would try to reverse that, even though it might screw up Rasheed a little bit more. But you at least know Yosh is going to hold up at left tackle a little bit better than what Rasheed has been doing. And again, I'm not going to downplay Rasheed. You got to remember this is only his second year and his first year seeing extended playing time.
I don't think he was
He
active at all last season. So yeah,
right.
especially in that regard. Yeah.
So you can tell he has the ability. He just hasn't got used to the speed of things yet.
And Mike Wall did point out that obviously it wasn't like he was great the rest of the game, but a lot of his struggles were earlier in the game. And Walker did tell the press after the game that early for, I think, all of the first quarter and part of the second, he was having trouble hearing the snap calls. So that's why on a bunch of plays where he got beat, it's because he was the last guy out of his stance and things like that. So you'd like to hope that in some home cooking, he'll look a little bit more decisive and
Have to
quick getting
learn
out of the steps.
He'll have to learn the Bakhtiari head turn. Because, well, you being an analytics guy, you've watched that, haven't you? Where Bakhtiari doesn't listen for it, or at least
Yep.
he didn't under Rodgers. He always had his head back on certain plays or when
Yep.
they needed to, and he would just watch Rodgers' moves and he could read it better than he could hear it.
Yep. So it's one of those that a lot of linemen don't like to do it. Bakhtiari is one of the few who does prefer to look because, like he said, he thinks that it's worth more to get off as early as he can on the snap of the ball than it is to see where his because yeah, and he's going on the assumption that because he's a tackle, the guy he's blocking is the guy that's to his since he's the left tackle, the guy he's blocking is either right in front of him or immediately to his left. So it's one of those where it's kind of like it's not coached, but if you're good enough, you can do it kind of thing. So it would be interesting to see if that's a trick that Walker or any of the O linemen pick up. But yeah, it just shows how special Bakhtiari is. I still think is when he's healthy. But yeah, it's just another obstacle because Daniil Hunter is still there on this defensive front for the Vikings. And like I said, they're bringing a lot of some exotic and some just jam 8 guys at the line of scrimmage and bring them all kind of looks. So it's gonna be a tough one for the Packers. They're gonna have to, Love's gonna have to process pre-snap. He's gonna have to help make line calls, especially because, like I said, if Myers isn't there, Myers is the one who's usually making the line calls. So Love is gonna have a bigger hand in this game. And
yeah, well, I think that's been part of the problem. Is Myers is the one making the line calls, and here's the. We were kind of talking about it earlier, where I said I think Stinovich needs to spend more time in the offensive line room than because I want to say it was Andy Herman, but I could be completely wrong on that one too. Showed the progression of offensive linemen for the last 3 years, and they've or their grades or whatever grades he was using have all declined over the last 3 years. So there's only 2 things you can do. It's obviously not the talent has gotten worse because we've retained most of the same people. The only I mean the only different spot is Nyman was at left tackle and not Walker. Otherwise, all the rest of them were out there on, Tom was at right tackle, Runyon was at right guard, Myers was at center, left guard was Jenkins when he came back, and then Nyman at left tackle. So there's only 2 possibilities of why they're regressing, other than, they've got some ticky-tacky injuries going on. One, Myers isn't making the right calls. He's not seeing the field like he should be, or the line like he should be seeing to make the calls for the line. And 2, they're not, and I hate saying this because I know Luke Butkus would probably eat me alive if I looked at him cross-eyed. The coaching isn't there. And the only thing that's changed coaching-wise is Stinovich is spending more time as the offensive coordinator than he is as the offensive line coach.
Yep. And that's always the gamble you take when it's like you try your best to keep a guy. Is you only have 2 options. You pay him more, you promote him. And that was kind of part of the gamble. Is it's like, and I honestly, when Stenovich got promoted, I didn't think it would be as big a deal because yes, obviously he has the title of offensive coordinator, but it's still LaFleur's offense. And I know that LaFleur, in part, because he's the head coach, he has responsibilities on all sides of all phases of the game, but it's his offense. And Stenovich, not to say Stenovich does nothing, but Stenovich is like a more of like a glorified secretary kind of thing in terms of what
Well, and
he does.
he's a rover.
Yeah,
He doesn't just stay in one room. He's going to go talk to the quarterbacks. He's going to go talk to the running backs. Whereas when before he took over the offensive coordinator, he was strictly offensive line.
yep,
So that's where he stayed.
yep.
So, like I said, nothing against Luke Buckus. I think he's a heck of a guy, a heck of a coach, but there's something lacking in that room.
Yeah. Whether and their best time was when the two of them were both in that room.
Yeah.
So maybe, like you said, maybe just another hour a day is what's needed, but they got to do something about it because like you said, these are a lot of the same guys, and for all of their play to fall off, there's a disconnect somewhere in there. But
Especially a guy like Runyon, when we know that Runyon's been one of the most stout guys on that line for the last 3-4
right,
years.
nothing special as a run blocker, but just one of the, I'll say it, he's one of the premier pass blocking guards in the past, his whole career, his time in Green Bay. And now he couldn't block he can't block a parking lot balustrade. Like, that's how bad he looks on certain plays. So yeah, there's something going on that they have to rectify and on the O line, because without O line play, they can't run the ball, they can't pass protect, and that means Love, is rushing through everything. So no better week to get it done, like I said, than this week, because you're facing a defensive coordinator who likes to blitz, 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 and that would be a great time to get it figured out. But that's really it for the cap of the Vikings. Like I said, it's a pretty meat and potatoes game. We're gonna find out what Barry's really got in his back pocket. I think both of us agree it ain't much, and we're gonna
It's going to be
see.
a blood and guts game because it's
Yep.
a rivalry game. So it's always the big question is, how many purple jerseys are you going to see in the stadium?
I don't even want to go. I don't want to touch that because it it's gonna it'll no matter what happens, even if the game, even if it starts out 80-20, proportion wise, the purple just stands out so much that anyone who looks at it, at some kind of picture of it, is gonna be like, they let him in and stuff like that.
Well, no,
And
I get that, but if it
yeah,
ends up like
the
the
Lions
Lions
game.
game where you're getting more Lions than you are Packers, that's going to screw things up because that just took away your home field advantage, and the noise is going to be worse for the offense than it is for the defense.
And that's, that ties into the team's bad starts. I know people don't like to hear this, but um the team has to give their fans something to cheer for. They'll be in it for the first few drives, but if you just look totally inept, fans are going to turn on you. That's how it always goes in sports. You got to show a pulse. And the trend the past, basically since not even, I can't even say when it was there. They've scored 13 points in the first half all season. So, the next touchdown they score will be the first one at home in the first half. So they got to get something going, and there's no time better than now. So, um, what you got for our over unders, Joe? Because I think we're just gonna keep saying the same. We're gonna up the over under on how many times we talk about the same things of what's dragging the Packers down. But for the game, the actual game on Sunday, what you got?
Well, that's what sucks about what's going on right now, because it sucks for content creators like us, because it's the same rhetoric every week. And even now with over and unders, that's pretty much the same thing. It's the same rhetoric every week. And and Nick and I were talking about that last year. It was just seemed like every week we were running the same over and unders because it fit perfectly. So my first one obviously is going to be 9.5 carries for Aaron Jones.
Ooh, I'm gonna say under. I just think that he's still hampered, and they're gonna just keep him limited until he. until he does pass it, I'm not gonna say over at this point.
I think they'll shock and go for 10 flat carries. So my next one, again, I don't want to put this kind of bad juju on it, but it is, something that I predicted early on and whatever. So we're in that stage of it. He's just got to correct it. Over under half an interception for Jordan Love.
I think it's going to be over because of the kind of defense he's playing against. I'm not necessarily saying that he's going to throw like bad ones, but I mean, all interceptions are bad on some level. But I just think that um, because Green Bay is going to be playing from behind most of the game, and Flores likes to pressure, and this O line ain't blocking. I think whether it's one where Love gets hit as he's throwing, or he's gonna just be rushed into a bad read, I think he's throwing at least one, maybe even two interceptions on Sunday.
Yeah, I want to say over two, just because I think that's the point we're at now. Which show was I watching that they said this on? I can't remember. Was it uh Lombardi's Bar, where one of them said that the wide receivers had a players only meeting, or had a players only meeting at some point this week. So maybe, obviously, they don't have the veteran leadership to go in and start cracking heads, but maybe it did them good, because, like we've talked about for the longest time, it seems like these wide receivers aren't running the routes that they need to be running, or they're running the same route when they should be running different routes, and they're all ending up in the same place. With that said, I still think it's going to be over, because, like you said, he's going to be rushed into something, or a receiver's going to run a wrong route again, or whatever. So yeah, I got over on that. My last one, over under half a sack for Rashawn Gary.
He'll get one. I think he'll get one.
He was shut out against the Broncos, wasn't he?
He was, but he was getting pressure throughout the game. Like I think he still led the team in pressures with like 4 or 6 or something like that. I think that was more a factor of no one else was really winning anything. Their only sack was a no yardage loss sack by Preston Smith. So I do think it was a function of Russ isn't the athlete he was even like 3 years ago, but he can still scoot. So they were doing more like collapse the pocket rushes than balls out rushes, and Kirk is not the same quarterback, that same kind of quarterback. So I think, especially if he's lining up over Brian O'Neill, I think he'll get at least one.
Yeah, I think I'll go with one on that for him too. I'd hate to see him get shut out 2 weeks in a row. I know it's a possibility, because sacks aren't always gimmies,
Yeah.
but I think he's getting healthier. He's getting into groove. I think he'll find a way to get it done. And my prediction, or maybe not prediction, but my hope is that they'll activate Jonathan Ford for one of his call ups, especially if Devontae Wyatt doesn't play.
I think even
So,
if Wyatt does, they should, because
well,
he's
they should,
like,
but they won't.
yeah.
But
Eh,
I'm hoping that if he doesn't play, that they'll bring him up for one, and not that he's going to be a world breaker by any means, but having another big beefy guy in there that's going to take up, because I like Carl Brooks, I like Colby Wooden, but let's face it, they're undersized pass rushers. They're
yep.
not really made to be the eat up double team type guys. So if they can get Jonathan, hell, this is what I would do. And I know I'm not a coach and I'm not a playmaker or whatever. I'd put friggin' TJ Slayton and Jonathan Ford out there and run two down linemen, and then have your two edge guys and your three inside linebackers out there, especially if Devondre plays.
Yeah, it's that's the thing too, is like if you're gonna run a sub package line because of that's what you want to do, is run sub package all the time. But if you're gonna do that, you gotta have some beef out there, and that's the problem. Is like um Kenny is, he's like 314 or whatever they list him at. Devontae is just over 300. and that it's Slayton, but they don't have, that was why their run defense was pretty solid, in 2010, is they just had 1,000 pounds worth of D linemen they could throw out there, and they don't have that anymore. So yeah, that's a big part of it. And honestly, I know what you're saying, that it's hard to have like 6 active linemen on a game day, but if Wyatt is, because what did he last, like less than a quarter on Sunday? Even if he's active this week, he's not going to be healthier than he was going into the Denver game. So I think they have to hedge their bets against that. Or obviously, if he's inactive, they've got to call up for it. But if he's active, I think there's a chance that he's called up anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would see. And like I said, give Kenny a break, throw the 2 fat guys out there, and just let them wreck things.
But,
and I can say that because I am a fat guy, so it's not fat shaming.
And on that note, I think we'll bring this one to a close. Just want to thank you all for joining us on this Week 8 game preview of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. Please give us a follow on Twitter. I'm at Kawano Mike. Joe is at Iowa_Joe86. The pod is at Ohana_Packers. Also, please go check out our website, ohanapackers.org. You can find the streams of the podcast episodes along with our blog posts there. Please give us likes and subscribes wherever you get your podcasts. Comment on the YouTube links. Give us any feedback on our posts on the website, on the podcast. We appreciate any sort of feedback. Like you said, Packers have to start digging themselves out of a hole, and you got to start getting the climb back to getting to 500. No better time to start than this week against the Vikings. And with that said, I want to say go Pack go and aloha.